Right. Oh, okay. There you go.
All right. So we're going to talk about 3 new blogs, and I'll tell you a little story, although I don't know all the details of how at least the first 2 came to be. We're going to talk about no self-check, no pharaohs, and email address requested. But the story of the new blog started with no self-check. We actually had an incident where some patrons at their library kind of were manipulating the system, and so the library put blocks on their account. Well, they went to the next town over, and of course, while they couldn't circuit the cert desk, the next town over had a self-check. And those neat little blocks that would normally pop up in Horizon, of course, the self-check doesn't see those. So they were still able to do their little game using the self-check. So we were asked by a library that doesn't even own a self-check, could we do something like this? Could we put a block on an account that would block them on the self-checks? And the answer is yes, we can. And we did. But in talking to Cheryl about this and working with SIF and stuff, I also said, hey, I bet we could make something similar to this for pharaohs. So much like block self-check, actually let's go to the next one, and Cheryl will talk about the email one. So basically it works just like a normal block. You can go in and add it, and we do ask that you do put a comment in there to explain it, so that way when they go to the self-check is going to say you can't use this, go to the cert desk. So that way when they come to you, you can pull it up and look. And it is system-wide. So for example, let's pick on 2 people. Let's say Monica puts the no self-check block on one of her patrons. The patron goes to Austin, no self-check. So it is region-wide. Okay? Similar situation for pharaohs. We have a pharaohs check for the block, and so if you were to block, it is system-wide, so even if you don't have pharaohs, and you do know patrons who like to go to the other town, if you block them, they will get a log. When they go to log into pharaohs at the library, they'll get a pop-up that says, you're not allowed to use this, go talk to the cert desk. So again, we ask you to put in comments, so that way if they do go to another location or you have another staff member, they can look at the comments and know what's going on. Yeah, question?
Another comment on how the pharaohs one could be used. That is when I use it at Plainview. I've had parents that, for legal reasons, do not want their children to be on the internet, and so that's how I handle that. Because it used to be I would pull their pin, which made it so they could no longer use Horizon to order things. This is a nice way to block the internet piece and still allow them to order books via this.
In fact, that's a good point. We had another library who liked no self-check reason for that exact same thing. They were able to ask for their kids to have no self-check, so the kids can't use the self-check. Okay, and I'm going to pass it back over to Cheryl to talk about it.
So then after we sent the email out about those 2 new blocks, then I think it was Teresa who emailed into the help desk and said, hey, if you're creating new blocks, why don't you create this one? Because we don't have an email block. We have a address correction and a phone correction requested, right? So I created an email address requested block, and that shows up on the block window, and it just says email address correction. All 3 of these are manual blocks, so you go up to Horizon under the borrow window when you're in the block window, and you add the note, and you choose from the list, and you can add a comment. So any questions about the email block? Gail?
So the ECR block doesn't prevent a person from checking out?
No, that one does not.
Okay.
So, no, all it does is request that you look at their email address. I don't think I could do that.
Okay.
So,
because we want them to come to the cert desk, so you take out the pin.
oh, well, we could talk about adding that to your self-check with some of your self-check settings. If you want people with bad email addresses to come to the cert desk and check out and not use the self-check, we could talk about that.
Okay.
I'll make a note. Any other questions? Okay. What's next? Oh yeah, and there was a SELCOtv episode that I think Rachel did on the new blocks, or Tyler did. I don't remember when we did it. So. Okay, so the third change in Horizon is the pre-overdue, some changes in the pre-overdue notices. So again, these are your courtesy reminders that come 2 days before the item is due. We made some changes in them at the beginning of the month because we automated them. Before the beginning of the month, somebody was running them at SELCO Monday through Friday. It would take an hour and a half to 2 hours to run all your pre-overdues. And then on the weekends, we rotated around. So one of us got to be the lucky person who ran pre-overdues on Saturday and Sunday. So now they are completely automated. So they just kick off in a scheduled task on the server at 6 in the morning. They're done by 7:30. They send an email to the help desk that we look for every day that says they're done and there were no problems. And if there are problems, then we have ways of going in and resolving those. So with that automation, now you get to customize certain areas. So you can change how many days. If you wanted them to go 3 days before or 4 days before, you can change that by location. And there are no longer some character limits that we had previously at that 255 8-bit character limit. Now they're beyond that. So that's it for the customization changes. Mike, some differences first, sorry. We previously did not send pre-overdues on the holidays. Now they are going out on the holidays. They did run on Labor Day, I checked. And they're going a little earlier. Before it would wait until about 8 a.m. Now they're going out at about 6. They're usually done by like 7:05. So, and the email address has changed from where they are coming from, and the bounce backs have changed a little bit. And Mike, can talk about that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So what Cheryl's talking about is an attempt to kind of simplify things on the horizon end. Is before everything would go from like pre-overdues, and we'd have to do weird things in Google to make the bounce back work. One of the changes Tom helped us build was a new relay system, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the way we can send the emails out changed, and so with that, so did some of the ways we can do it. And so every library, we've created, say for example, we'll pick on Alice, because she's fun to pick on. Her emails coming from her are going to say PLA_notices. And we did that so that way when we set a prize in the email system, we can set it once. And then we can change where that actually goes to. So that way the patron, as staff changes, is always going to have this email address. It's not going to be Alice, and then if Alice were to leave, then it drops off the face of the earth. So we did it that way. And we did it that way so they would route back. So they are routing back to wherever you told us you wanted them to go. And if you want to change that, by all means, you can contact the help desk. Yep, I'm so sorry. So I talked a little bit about the email and bounce backs. Now, bounce backs, because the relay works differently, before we used a different component called S-tunnel. What S-tunnel will do is would send emails out normally like a normal person through an account. The relay actually just sends them all out. That's why we can automate it. So one of the things you're going to notice on some of these bounce backs, if you haven't already, is when you get a bounce back, it actually looks like they all failed. Just as an email conversation view. Because when it sends it out, it groups them together. And so when one bounce back, you do see the others. So keep in mind if you see a bounce back and it's got like 20-some emails on it, no, they did not fail. Just look through there and find the one bounce back that did. That's one of the kind of trade-offs we had moving to the relay. Okay. Yep, and again, this is only for pre-overdues. Another thing, depending on how your library is set up, that you could change is the BCC. We have the ability to add in a BCC. So if you want to be able to check your sent folder and see that the emails went out, let us know because we will add, again, your email address to the BCC so they'll actually show up in your account as sent. Because the relay works a little differently, unless you have that, you're not going to see them as sent because they don't actually go through your account. Any questions? No?
So for all of you getting pre-overdues, I already set up the BCC for your pre-overdues. So you would see those in your sent file, your sent mail. If you're not getting pre-overdues, remember they only go out by email. And if you want to get them, contact the help desk and they'll get you set up. We love them. Yeah. Save you from having fun.
One thing I should point out, too, that, as a reminder, is the nature of email. Yeah. We can only control them going out. And so as other ISPs and email service providers control spam, which is a good thing, the problem is we do send out a good amount of email, and sometimes they get confused between our good email versus the African prince who wants to send them money. And so they get sometimes confused. So while we can do some work to help that, our ability to do that is limited. But that's one of the reasons why Cheryl added the BCC, so you can see that they are going out. The best practice is for patrons to check their spam folders, check their spam settings, even add your email address into their contacts is another good trick. And in worst case scenarios, they may even need to contact the ISP. We can try to do that, but let's face it, the ISPs don't, in every case, know who we are, and we're just some guy, hey, let's own my email for them sending you through. You can trust me. We're fine. Okay, any questions?
Okay, that's it.
No. Right?
Yep. That's it.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Has the iPhone 6 been released yet?
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up today with the SELCO Popular Works collection. We have a problem, but it's a good problem to have. When we set up our account through Collection HQ for the data-driven LSTA project, we got an unexpected windfall of $22,000 in Baker and Taylor credit. This was a signing incentive that Collection HQ is making available. It has to be used on materials purchased through Baker and Taylor. It can't be used on e-resources. We can't get a check. We have to actually buy physical materials with it. When we wrote the grant project to get our Collection HQ account set up, this was not on our horizon. We didn't know this was coming, so there's nothing in the grant about this, and therefore not all that many rules about how we can actually use this. So we had the fun of sitting down and deciding, well, how are we going to use 22 grand in credits? What to do, what to do. We had several meetings about this because it's not as simple as it might sound. One obvious suggestion was, well, let's divvy it up amongst the libraries. Frankly, there's enough of you that in order to do that, you each would have gotten a little tiny credit, and I don't know that it really would have made a huge amount of difference in your day-to-day lives. It just seemed like we would be, you-know-whatting the money away if we did that. So we decided not to go that route. We talked about some kind of grant project where, a la Legacy, you would come up with ideas on how to create collections or how to use this. Not a bad idea. A lot of work, not just for us, but for you in writing applications. And we really did want something that would serve the interests of the entire region. We wanted something that we could use strategically rather than just tactically. Tactic, whatever that word is. So eventually we came up with the idea of the Popular Works Collection. This is a collection of popular materials, popular series or authors, that we will purchase and house here in the SELCO office. We will make those materials completely open. No logo request, no restrictions on request. They can go anywhere. Sort of have popular fiction, will travel. Although I shouldn't say fiction, because it may very well be some nonfiction titles as well. They will be able to go to any patron in the region, regardless of where they're at or what the local library policies are. This will do a number of things for us. It will help alleviate some of the long request queues that we get on popular materials. It will help supplement your collections. But, and this is the key point, what we're really looking for is that it will help us do some data analysis. We want to see what happens when we just release a bunch of popular materials into the mainstream with no search restrictions, no request restrictions.
We have some theories that, in addition to helping you out, this might actually lower the average time that it takes for patrons to get requests. We have some other theories that, paradoxically enough, if you open things up instead of restricting them, you might actually serve more people more quickly. That's a theory. We can't really test it very well. We're hoping to use these materials to get us some real data, which, while it's not part of the data-driven decisions LSTA project that made this possible, it is certainly keeping in the spirit of that. So we're going to be taking a look at what happens.
So Don had mentioned sort of looking at wait periods. You know, we have this assumption, this theory, that if we open up and make our materials less restricted, that our wait queues will go down more significantly. More people will get more material quicker. We may be wrong. So I've come up with sort of a list of questions that, you know, this isn't all of them. If you want to see all the questions, there's an ILS ops document from when we brought it to them in August that has kind of all the questions so far. But it is meant to be an experimental collection. You know, we may be wrong about the whole time. Maybe all that ends up happening is our in-transit time becomes longer and nothing happens with hold queues. But since we don't have any means of testing that, because SELCO doesn't really have a collection that circulates in the same manner as yours, this was the kind of the best way of taking that $22,000 divided among 3 years and utilizing it. So there's some things I know for sure we'd like to test out with I-types in particular. I already know that when we get these items, we're probably going to create some new schemas for I-types. One of the things that several of you have asked for is I want to limit my DVDs down to, say, 5. I only want my patrons to check out 5 DVDs. How our current I-types are being utilized, we can't do that. But if we rethink how we're doing I-types, maybe that would be something we could do with I-type groups. So across my library, Kathy, you're like, wait, but we can. But not if you, not across, like if you have different, you know, you use an I-type for a book and you're using it for a DVD, you can't limit your patron to just a specific number of DVDs because they can request them in from other libraries with different I-types. So if we rethink how we do our I-types, we may be able to do some of the things that people have asked us for that we can't do currently. On top of that, you know, here are some more questions. We want to see sort of the comparison of our stuff. When I say our stuff, I mean the SELCO Popular Collection to sort of your collection. We want to look at the entire SELCO collection as a whole and sort of see where do we start hitting critical masses, what happens when this is played with, what happens when that's played with. So it's a lot of data comparison. And we needed a way to sort of compare apples to apples. So the easiest way to do that was to take some popular authors, you know, your James Patterson, who comes out with a book every quarter, that you, depending on who's writing it, right? So some of the easiest way to compare things would be to look at what happens when we do this to this Alex Cross book, and then we do something else to the next Alex Cross book. Or maybe we're going to buy multiple copies of the same title. Maybe we're not. It sort of depends on what we're going to be testing out. Oh, yeah, another great thing about Collection HQ is that we are loading in our ebook data in there too. So we will be able to utilize some of our ebook data and see what happens to our hold queues when we buy a whole bunch of new ebooks. I'm sort of just winging this right now. So do the numbers go down because people want ebooks as opposed to print, or vice versa? So we are going to be using the Collection HQ reports to see things like, are we overstocked or understocked in certain areas? And what's happening with us, SELCO compared to other libraries of equal size across the country. Collection HQ lets you do those comparisons. So we're going to be comparing our libraries to our libraries to ebooks, our libraries to other libraries, and we're going to be utilizing Collection HQ reports, Horizon reports, all sorts of data to make some decisions or make some recommendations, or at the very least sort of report on what we're finding. It's hard to believe, but we have been in Horizon for 10 years. So there, I think, are a lot of assumptions we made 10 years ago that were perfectly valid then, but it's been a long time. The world has changed a lot in 10 years, so maybe this will give us some data to show us what has and hasn't changed. Trying to think if there's anything else. Some people have asked about our physical space concerns. That's part of the reason we went with a popular collection, was to not only have those apples-to-apples comparison, and to alleviate request queues, but also because the books really won't be here very much. They're going to be out and checked out. By the time they make it back here, probably need to be weeded. So that's what I've got so far. Donovan's going to wrap up.
Okay, so somebody help me out. Who is a comparable author to James Patterson? Same genre. Okay, so we don't want you to change what you're doing with collection development. Please don't count on this collection. We do hope it will help you out, but I will warn you right now, we may very well buy a whole bunch of the new James Patterson book and none of the new Janet Ivanovich, because we want to use her books as the control. We may buy a few of one title and a whole lot of a comparable title because we want to test that. So keep doing the collection development that you're normally doing is probably the big takeaway that I want to make sure everyone gets. I know we're all stressed financially. This is not the time to cut your budget because the SELCO Popular Works collection is going to take over for you. While we do want to alleviate request queues and we do want to supplement your collections, the data analysis piece of this is really our top priority. So this is going to be a weird collection. It's not going to be the kind of collection you would put in your library. So we just wanted to really, really stress that. I don't want any hard feelings along the way. Cheryl mentioned that we were getting these credits over the course of 3 years. The bulk of it comes in year one, about 50%, if I remember correctly. And then there's a smaller percentage that comes in year 2, and then just a little sliver comes in year 3. So the bulk of this is going to be in the first couple of years. We're really excited about this. Are there any questions or comments? Yes?
It sounds like it's going to be mainly books, but then DVDs were brought up, so is it one format, or is it going to be a combination of formats?
We're still working that out, I think.
Okay. So for those of you who order from B&T, you know that the DVDs are like under their entertainment. At this point, it's unclear whether or not our credit will apply to B&T entertainment. So, but it will be books and audiobooks.
Yes.
And this collection will stay in the region?
Yes.
Because you're saying it's going to be wide open for research. But
we talked about not allowing.
Yeah, we're not going to let those go out to Midlink, because that would sort of invalidate the data.
Curious, you're talking about the effect of, it's not just types on hold queues. How are you going to differentiate that from just the effect of dumping more copies out there?
We're working that out still. We still have to do some of the methodology on this. That is a good question. I know Cheryl's got some ideas.
Yeah, I have helped you basically a snapshot, pre-tape of things, and then I can monitor.
And that may be where controls also come in, where we treat one kind of material this way, and maybe we'll treat another kind of material that's comparable another way to help us get some of that. Anyone else? Yes?
What happens when you read it?
You don't know yet.
Okay.
You want them?
Yeah, we haven't gotten so far as disposal, if that's what you're getting at.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at fitting the bulk of the value in the first year, then clearly these are going to be somewhat for much effect obviously after that. But if you just hit $22,000, well, not 22,
Cheryl can probably talk more to this than I can, but it seems to me the answer to that will be much along the lines of what you're doing when you buy a whole bunch of something new and then the interest sort of drops off after a couple of years. The dynamic, I think, will probably be pretty similar. So, in other words, weeding.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. So we are significantly ahead of schedule, which is awesome. But before we go then, since there is a little bit of time, I just wanted to pause one last time and ask, are there any questions or comments on anything you've heard today or anything else for that matter? Am I trying to stump the chump up here? Yeah, Robert.
I just want to say thank you to Matt, Jeff, and Chair. And I just want to say, SELCO makes things so easy for me, and I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
This is an issue. Last week when we moved down, those people who were directing the automation contact at my library were all in a meeting. So when the library came back up again, no one called. And then when we called you, they said, well, we're just going to send out an email to the contacts and the library directors. Is there any way that when these things happen that we could send the email out to more people? Or do we just need to put more people on our copy?
Let me I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what I'm just asking.
Yeah, let me ask everyone about that. Because we haven't asked this question in a while, but the last time this came up, we heard pretty emphatically that nobody really wants an all list, like email that goes out to every single user.
Sure.
So our options at that point are look for alternatives. In addition to the emails, we do put those out on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we do recommend that if you're not a director or an automation contact and you need to know what's going on, that's the first place you should go.
And they said they couldn't, the Facebook page wasn't working.
That's the first I've heard that. I haven't heard that. Has anyone else seen that?
I saw the post, but no, we saw it at St. Charles.
Okay.
Yeah. We like Facebook and Twitter for that because we don't control them, so they're not going to go down if we're having a problem. Even if it's maximum emergency and we've lost internet access, we can all whip out our phones and send them out that way. Or, if you have cell phone connectivity on your iPad. So we use that as a supplement. We certainly could start sending those out to everybody. I don't know if the libraries want everyone's spam.
The policy is usually to call those people who are on PC Alliance to let them know what they're up.
Not necessarily. The problem is there's a lot of you and there's only a few of us. And we've never been able to easily call back all the libraries that call in or just call everybody or even just call the PC Reliance library. There's just too many of you, not enough of us. Depends on the kind of crisis.
That was what I had thought.
Yeah. No, we cannot promise that we can do that. So we rely on email for the contacts and directors and our social media contacts to get the word out. Certainly, you can add more people to your automation contacts. There's no limit on how many automation contacts you can have. That is kind of a double-edged sword, though, because being an automation contact doesn't just mean I get the emails. There are, with great email power comes great responsibility, as they say in the comic books. We do then expect automation contacts to get email from us and disseminate that. And not everyone's always so comfortable with that. But I would say if you want to add people to your automation contact list, we can certainly do that. Otherwise, tell people to take a look at social media. If there is interest in sending something out to everybody, I'm open to that, but frankly, I'm going to want to really run that by everybody before we start doing that, because people do get unhappy about that. But that would be another alternative if we all decided as a group that we wanted to go that route. Good question. Anyone else? Okay. Let's go Mexican. All right. Thank you all for coming.